Hello everybody, this is Book of Hours. It is about 11 o'clock in the morning on August 29th in San Francisco, California, Pacific time. And once again we are at Kitchen Talk with Book of Hours. This is the view from my kitchen window. I'm busy doing some housework and I wanted to go ahead and do just like a quick podcast about scapegoating. So scapegoating is when you have a system or a group of people that want to vilify or make one person in the group the villain. It's really common in like corporate America. Someone always has to be the villain. It's also really common in families. Especially American families, because American families don't look at mental health and psychological issues as real issues. They only look at tangible, physical, medical issues as issues that need to be addressed and need to be focused on. So mental health gets ignored. And so what happens is you've got, in a family dynamic, there's a scapegoat, there's a golden child. Usually those are the two main characters in the offsprings. And then it is always, sort of created or manufactured or manifested through a narcissist. So this particular podcast is not that politically or culturally focused. It's more about, looking within. It's more about, looking at who you are and how do you feel about, the situations that you're in and the roles that maybe have defined you in your life. So, pardon me while I make some noise. Sorry. Okay. So, and so I was just like, well, you know what? Book of Hours is all-encompassing. It doesn't always have to focus on politics. It doesn't always have to focus on, the cultural arts or things like that. We can also discuss, some of these more unspoken dynamics that, and this is sort of how we live throughout our life. I mean, we are sort of defined by the protocols or we're defined by the characteristics that outside influences have created in us or manufactured in us. So scapegoating. Scapegoating is when, again, it's when one person is considered, the troublemaker or the black sheep or the divisive one. Scapegoats, people who are accused of being bullies are sometimes scapegoated. They're not actually bullies, but they are accused of being bullies. So they're a scapegoat for maybe something else that's going on, something a little more treacherous behind the scenes. It's happened to me actually many times in my life. It's actually, I've been the scapegoat. I've been the one that's been scapegoated, and I've been the identifying scapegoat in just about every scenario in my life that you can imagine. In my home life, with my family growing up, in my work environment, and also in an environment, if I shared an apartment and I had roommates or friends that I shared the apartment with, I've always been the scapegoat. I've always been in this sort of victim place. So one of the things that a narcissist does is they need to make sure that the scapegoat, the person who is the scapegoat, is always the scapegoat. They can never have another identity. So to give you an example, I have a narcissistic mother. She's never wrong. When I explained to her, for instance, somebody in the family took pictures of me in my childhood with my father, who died a few years ago. They took them out of the family photo albums. They just ripped them out. So I'm no longer part of those family photos from years ago, from my childhood. These were all photos from like the 1970s, camping in Yosemite, going to property up in the mountains where, you know, my dad was chasing me around and, you know, stuff like that, kid stuff, fun stuff with the family. Those photos were removed from all the photo albums. There's big empty spaces now where those pictures used to be. So I asked my mother, why were those photos removed? So it's important then when you're dealing with a narcissist not to place blame. Because when you place blame, I'm telling you, it goes into crazy making, intense, emotional, completely erratic, spinning out conversations where you end up feeling 1,000% worse than you did when you just asked a simple question. So instead of asking her who pulled the pictures of me off the photo albums, instead of asking her that, I said, why? Why were those photos taken from the family photo albums? Why is there a big hole where my pictures used to be? You hear that? That's the sound of nothing. That's no response. Because a narcissist can't respond to why. They can only respond to who. A narcissist can only, deflect off of a why question. I mean, a who question. You know, it's like if I would have said, who did this? Her answer could have been, I don't know. And then she could have just dropped it and said, I don't want to talk about it. And then the conversation would have died right there. But if I say why, then it forces her to look within. Because whenever you come up with a because we didn't like the photos of you, so we took them out. Well, that opens up a whole new dialogue, that doesn't it? It opens up, well, why don't you like the photos of me? You know, you see the question, you see why, how it always transfers into yet another deeper, more meaningful response. So why were the photos taken out? Why were my photographs as a child with my father taken out of the photo album? Why did that happen? By asking why, I don't place blame. It's just a simple question. Why do you think that happened? I mean, it's really it's not placing blame. It's not trying to cause problems. It's not a fight. It's a real simple question. So that's one example of how you can handle a narcissist in your life, and they're everywhere. They're not just, mothers. They're typically mothers. That's usually who the narcissists in your world will be. Typically mothers. But sometimes they can also be, workmates, employers, bosses, siblings, friends. We have some friends who, we know some people who are narcissists. We don't actually hang out with them. We just know of them. JP knows them, but he's not seen them in years, and I don't even know who they are, so I don't even care. But another thing that a narcissist needs from her scapegoat, or his scapegoat, is for the person to always be sort of the black sheep, the troubled kid. Oh, there they go again, getting into trouble. And so when you succeed at something, whether you get a raise at your job or you find somebody who is, and you become engaged or married to them, and they're actually like a genuinely like superior, good human being, and they're really, really good, it really upsets the family dynamic. I mean, they have you pegged in their stereotype. What are you doing being successful when you're supposed to be the bad seed? What the heck is going on? So as a result of that, even when the scapegoat is successful at things, they get even more negative pushback, more game playing, more of the narcissists, try to control the situation to convince, the family dynamic that the scapegoat is a bad person. And definitely, if you're a scapegoat and you are witnessing all of this happen to you, sort of like watching it like a movie, or it's like you've become so illuminated as to the dynamics of, you know, the human condition and this, you know, the psychological machinations that people play in their lives. You become so aware of this that when it happens around you, it's kind of like watching, you know, watching a movie. You're a part of it, but you're not invested in it because it does not define you. So, if you are a scapegoat, you will certainly feel the wrath and the game playing and the bullshit from the family when you announce that you have some success. And in my case, the success is in the form of being engaged to probably one of the best human beings on the planet. Smart, everything that, you know, narcissists and the golden children that the narcissist is placed. And don't get me wrong, the golden child, having that role is no picnic. I have read a lot about the golden child, about the problems that affect the golden child later on in life. They can become wife abusers. They can become pretty nasty people. Because they are told that they're the best at everything. And what if somebody comes along who is outside of the family dynamic that says, yeah, no, I'd like to offer some input that's different from what your family dynamic has told you, and boy, you don't ever want to feel the wrath of the golden child. So obviously there's issues there, and a lot of golden children grow up to feel really guilty also about that role. You know, that it's not fair that one of the siblings had to be a scapegoat, you know, and suffer, you know, ostracization, being ostracized from the family, always being told that they were the black sheep, always being the trouble child. Oh, you know, if it weren't for this person identifying all of our faults, why, we would have such a happier, smoother, more harmonious family now, wouldn't we? And so when you've got a scapegoat, you've got an opportunity for the narcissist to come in and save the day by saying, let's be harmonious. Let's just try to nip this in the bud. But see, the thing about the scapegoat is that all they see in every dynamic is machinations, manipulations, lies, and the narcissist trying to make herself out to be the hero. And once again, the question of why did the photographs get removed from the photo album never gets answered. In response to that question, the narcissist will go then to the golden child and any other siblings and say, my feelings are hurt by the scapegoat, go attack. And she's got her little goons to go and attack. And wouldn't you know it, the scapegoat is still saying, okay, you're attacking me, but the question still remains, why are the photographs removed from the photo album? So not only is the scapegoat ignored, her very valid question is ignored, but then the narcissist makes it about her. How dare you hurt our narcissist? She's sacrificed so much for you. And the whole conversation spins out into some territory that doesn't have anything to do with why were the photos removed from the album? Because that's a question that would really, really define the truth about the scapegoat's role and how the narcissist and the golden child, whether it's subconsciously done or not, truly feel about the scapegoat. You see? If you have to address that, well, because we don't like you, aha, then I'm right. And I've been right for decades. And oh boy, you can't ever have the scapegoat be right. If the scapegoat is ever right about anything, then that just upsets everyone's world. So one of the things that helps while you're transitioning into this role of really standing up for yourself and being, you know, a more complete individual, not defined by the roles that your family dynamic has sort of birthed you into or born you into, is just basically pushing back. You just push back, and every time you push back, you know, somebody might respond with something really stupid, and it just makes them look stupid, and you just, you know, you're just like, you just look stupid. You know, you want to invalidate my thoughts, you want to invalidate you know, my experiences as being the scapegoat and what how those experiences have shaped my life. You want to invalidate all of this? It just makes them look like an asshole, you know? So I would say that, you know, this is sort of a PSA, a public service announcement. Anybody out there that finds themselves, whether it's in the political world or the social world or the cultural world or academic, or, you know, if you're in a job in the corporate world and you find yourself kind of being constantly victimized and you're wondering, why do I get set up like this? You know, why do I have to take on this role? Well, you might want to go back to your family history and find out what your role is in the family dynamic. The best thing that ever happened to me was discovering that I was the scapegoat. I had no idea. I had no idea I was the scapegoat. I had no idea that every single time there was an issue with me feeling ostracized or disrespected, it was never ever addressed. It was never ever said to me, ever, my entire life, from my family, ever. It was never said to me, we understand that that's the way you feel. Our intentions are not to make you feel that way. Let's talk about certain examples that made you feel ostracized and made you feel disrespected. I never got that, because the examples are true. They would have been really, really good, and it would have made everybody look really bad. And you can't have that, can you? And also, the goal, whether subconsciously or consciously done, is to keep me in that position and to keep the narcissist in control of the whole dynamic and make sure that we've got, you know, the scapegoat in her tidy little role of troubled child, black sheep, problem sibling, whatever you want to call it. For instance, you know, I got I was in a situation where I was living with a roommate for 7 years, and I allowed a very, very toxic friend who I didn't know she had a history of, you know, mental illness, and I didn't know she had been in jail for fraud and all this stuff, but she, you know, a lot of scapegoats are actually, their ideology about people is very pure. They come from a place of, let me help you, and that's who they are. They don't have, you know, their goal is not to get something out of an act of altruism or an act of helping someone. Their goal is to simply help them because it's the right thing to do, and they don't really expect anything in return. So I was helping a friend out by saying, you know, my roommate likes you. Why don't you go ahead and set up shop in the apartment for a little while until you get your life together. I understand you're going through some difficulty at work and things like that. Well, the roommate and the former friend completely turned on me. The friend is, like I said, she had mental health issues and she'd been in jail for fraud. So this is how she navigates through life. This is how she gets jobs. This is how she gets friends. She basically defrauds people of their money and their homes. And that's what she did with me. And so the narcissist in my life flew out and helped JP, who is, you know, my husband, my future husband, helped him. This gave her an opportunity to be the rescuer, to say, I'm so glad that I had the opportunity to help my wonderful daughter out of yet another bad situation. So not only did it give her an opportunity to look like the rescuer, and not only did it really propped her up and made the entire family dynamic sympathetic towards her, it allowed me to maintain that position of screw up. It allowed me to maintain that position of, you know, troubled sister, difficult black sheep daughter, a bad seed, whatever you want to call it. It allowed me to maintain that. So my mistake was not hiring someone to go in and have them help me get out of that bad situation. My mistake was allowing the narcissist to come in and help. And I regret it to this day. It was one of the worst decisions I could make because it kept me in that role of, you know, like bad seed. and then it made her some sort of, saving angel. Complete manipulation. Complete and total manipulation, And of course, the family dynamic that sees all of this and hears about all of this, they don't know the backstory. They don't know that I lived there for 7 years without a problem. Did anyone ever celebrate the fact that I lived in one of the most expensive cities in the country and was able to have a place for over 7 years that was rent controlled, and I paid less money in rent than all of my friends, and that I was able to be smart enough to have a decent relationship with a very difficult woman who was my roommate, but I was able to because I'm so, so grounded in who I am as a person, that we hardly ever fought. We got along. I mean, it was a very, very healthy environment. And the only thing that upset that healthy environment is that I allowed this other individual who has a history of mental health issues and was put in jail for fraud, that I allowed that person in my life. Do you think the family dynamic would look at the longer term success that I had, being able to live and thrive in one of the most expensive cities in the world? Do you think that they would look at that? No, their only thing that they focused on was the fact that, oh, you're the bad seed, mom had to go out there, or, excuse me, narcissist had to go out there and rescue you again. So, it's a very, very, duplicitous and manipulative dynamic, and it's really important that you out there, whoever you are, that you know what your role is in the world. And once you know it and you can identify it, then you can declare, you can make a sort of open declaration that you reject it. So I'm not a scapegoat. I rejected that role years ago, and as a result of that, I became successful and I became respected. And I met somebody who thought that I brought value to the world and believes that I bring value to the relationship and the household and, his family and to the world at large. I'm not a scapegoat. I'm not a bad seed. I'm not this. And even though the family dynamic in my life has never actually come out and said that, they've also never ever addressed and respected that my question of why were all my photographs ripped out of the photo album. That's a valid question. Why were they ripped out of the photo album? Why is it that I always felt ostracized? Oh, stop saying that you're feeling ostracized. You're just being a jerk. You're just being a troublemaker. Why do you feel so disrespected? Here, let's go talk about how great narcissist is. Let's prop her up. She did so much for you as a kid. You're so ungrateful. And all of a sudden, the dialogue shifts from me asking a simple question to suddenly the narcissist or the matriarch of the family is like, the best thing ever. So she gets all of that affirmation that she needs. Narcissists have, low self-esteem. They have a lot of trauma from their past, a lot of issues. That's why they're narcissists. So she gets all of that confirmation. She gets all of that affirmation, and I don't get any of it because I'm the scapegoat. And I have to be the one, and I can't ever complain, and I can't ever say that things are not the way that they should be, and I can't ever identify the dysfunctional dynamic. I can't ever identify that. And if I do, then I'm vilified and criticized and reminded, that everyone else is the hero, others are the hero, and others are, swooping in and making sacrifices and saving my life. Yeah, so don't ever have a narcissist help you. So I do regret that. But that doesn't define who I am. And it doesn't define who you are as well. So keep that in mind. look up scapegoat on Google. This is something that I've learned about in the last like 2 or 3 days. It's been the most illuminating time of my life. So I hope that you have found this video to be helpful. Signing off now. This is Book of Hours. Bye.